The last couple of hours that an alleged Chinese spy with links to Prince Andrew has been named after a court order protecting his identity was lifted. The businessman, named as Yang Tengbo, had previously only been known as H6 and was banned from the UK last week by a semi-secret national security court. Mr Yang, who agreed to have his anonymity lifted, said he had done nothing wrong and descriptions of him as a spy were entirely untrue. Well, our Home and Legal Affairs correspondent Dominic Casciani was in court for the ruling.
It was quite an extraordinary and very short hearing this afternoon. Not what we were expecting. We were told to come to court at 2 o'clock because of basically an urgent application in court, and we expected we were going to have a bit of a battle over whether or not H6, who we can now say is Yang Tengbo, also known as Chris Yang, whether or not we could name him. And as we came into court, it became clear that Mr Yang's lawyers were going to apply to have his anonymity lifted. This is a very, very unusual situation because typically in a case such as this before the Special Immigration and Appeals Commission, the semi-secret court, applicants who've been effectively banned from the UK either as a national security risk because they are a suspected spy or perhaps a suspected terrorist tend to want to keep their anonymity because of effectively the potential crushing blow this allegation has to their reputation were it to be public. But Mr Yang said he wanted to go on the front foot and to be public about this. And through his lawyers, he told the court that there'd been an enormous amount of media reporting and speculation about his relationship with Prince Andrew and about his identity and about his activities. And also he was aware of the possibility the chat that he may get named in Parliament under parliamentary privilege. That's effectively the means by which an MP can say something in Parliament even though there is a reporting restriction in place in court, and therefore Mr Yang wanted to effectively say publicly who he was to end that speculation and to put his story out there that he says it is entirely untrue that he is some kind of spy for the Chinese Communist Party. He says he is a legitimate businessman and he's going to fight on to try to clear his name. So that's where we've got to this afternoon. Days and days of speculation. To be frank, some reporting in some parts of the foreign press already identifying Mr Yang, but now we're able to name him here in the UK as well.
Well, that was Dominic Casciani. The Conservative MP and former Security Minister Tom Tugendhat introduced plans for a register of hostile state agents, which didn't actually get implemented because of the general election here in the UK. He talked to me earlier and he told me there is a pattern of Chinese hostile activity.
Well, I don't want to speak about the individual case, if you'll forgive me, but what I will say is that there is a pattern of hostile activity by China, organised by its so-called United Front Work Department, trying to influence and gather intelligence, and not just in the UK, but around the world, and trying to influence everybody from academics and journalists, business people, politicians, people in the public eye, to try and change the debate, to try and change the nature of the conversation about China. And that's really what this report is all about.
In terms of the objectives, tell me more about what you think the Chinese are trying to do here.
Well, China has long held a view that it should be influencing the way in which it is spoken about in other places. So we've seen academics being pressured and on occasion silenced. We've seen individuals in the United Kingdom, sometimes Chinese citizens, sometimes Hong Kongers, who have been pressured to change what they're saying. And we've seen, of course, standard espionage, the stealing of intellectual property, economic secrets, and so on in order to profit China. We've also seen, of course, that those overseas police service stations, as they were called, in Glasgow, in Croydon, and a few other places, where we've seen the attempt to influence, to pressure people in the United Kingdom. And of course, most egregiously, perhaps, we've seen the Chinese consul in Manchester beating up or attempting to beat up various different people who are protesting outside the Chinese consulate. So we've seen a pattern of activity, and that's why having the foreign influence registration scheme in action as soon as possible is so important. That's why I set it up, and would have been in action had the election not come a little bit earlier than I think any of us were expecting. Had it come in November, it would have been ready in time. And it should be ready now, because we need to see China on the enhanced tier. That's exactly what MI5 have asked for, because that would create the ability to gather the information to make sure that this kind of an action could be identified much earlier so that we were able to stop it.
Tell me more about how you see that register actually working, because the worry is all about influence and spying. So do you think those various elements that we're concerned about would play ball?
Well, here's the thing. They don't have to play ball. Either they declare what they're doing, in which case we can identify the pattern of activity, and in which case we can identify if a person is seeking to have influence over various different arms, or indeed if various Chinese areas of interest are trying to put pressure on various different recognizable politicians or businesses or whatever it happens to be, so we can identify the theme. Or if they don't, then they're committing an offence by not registering. So either way, we get a better understanding. That's exactly why MI5 have asked for this, and why they're right to ask for it, because what we need to do is we need to identify what's going on. As the expression goes, you're looking for a needle in a haystack. But of course, if you're going to look for a needle in a haystack, first of all, you need a haystack. And the Foreign Influence Registration Scheme is about building that haystack of data, of information, to make sure that we're able to deal with the threat that we face.